The cognitive bias, yeah? And I'm not anti-Christian, I like the ethical, right? So I'm not here to bash. But you've got to try and be objective as well. And we'd all love to believe this narrative. Yeah, we'd love to believe the narrative of the miracle and the afterlife, etc. Yeah? And therefore I should be aware of my cognitive bias. Now this is framed, it's purely anecdotal evidence. You've got 3,000 religions on the planet, I hear. All of their religious books are based on anecdotal evidence, essentially. It doesn't mean they're wrong. But in terms of evidence,
what does that matter?
You've got to accept that anecdotal evidence is less powerful than, say, empirical evidence or even inferential.
Right, can I just respond to that? Because firstly, let's be clear. Let's be clear. Empirical evidence is only powerful when it comes to things that can be disproved. The scientific method is based upon understanding material causes for material events, based upon hypotheses, based upon a principle of falsification. The problem with miracles is that they are not based upon material causes for material effects. They are based upon a non-material cause for a material effect. In other words, you can't reproduce them and you can't falsify them. That also means that scientific inquiry is only strong when it talks about the material world. It is weak when it talks about miracles. And as for cognitive bias, the questioner himself demonstrates cognitive bias because he is assuming the norms of Western civilization that prioritizes the idea that all things should be subject to scientific inquiry, and that itself is a form of cognitive bias. There's nothing wrong with having a culture. There's nothing wrong with having an inheritance. The question is, what can guide us to life? And what Ridvan pointed out was that atheism didn't give us that. It basically says that the world is meaning, that you are dust and you shall return unto dust, and that is the fullness of your life. But yet we encounter a world that is full of meaning. And if it is full of meaning, brothers and sisters, that contradicts the atheistic worldview. The atheistic worldview is not sufficient to explain the experience of life. And atheists themselves live in contradiction to it. Do you want to? Wait, no.
Okay, I want to just talk about one aspect here. So in the question, there was one element, which is actually a very popular narrative that is mostly repeated online in online circles. It is something about there are 3,000 different religions, or variations of this are that there are so many thousands of gods. So which one? I want to address one thing about this. Now, it might seem very impressive on the surface among online atheists, for example, to ask this question, but there are so many thousands of gods, which one? Or there are so many thousands of religions, which one? Well, over 50% of the human population on this planet believes in a religion, in a religion that is related to the Bible message or to the Abrahamic God, to the God of Abraham. Now, I wouldn't call Islam necessarily an Abrahamic religion. I wouldn't even say that Muslims believe in the God of Abraham or in the God of the Bible. However, even Islam is in some way related to the God of the Bible, is in some way related to the Bible narrative, right? So the majority of the human population believes in something that is related to this. So it is kind of ludicrous to, and when you go outside of that, you only have very few religions that actually contest these religions in terms of the numbers. So if you want to compare, this God to those thousands of other gods, of which nobody even knows, of which in which nobody even believes. So it is a strange comparison to make, because one of them is obviously very relevant and very important in the history, in the narrative of faith, in the history of the world, and it could be inferred that there is a reason why this God that we are talking about is so important in the history of this world. It could be that this God relates to actual truths, as opposed to so many other entities or alleged beings that that are not about truth and that nobody knows about, and that do not play a role in the world. And there are some people who spend their miserable existence, like this guy here, for example, who just talk about, oh, really?
I'm not doing really. I'm trying to
Excuse me, can I respond on your point?
Yeah, sure.
Would that be okay? So to respond on your point.
Talk to everybody, bro.
Sorry. Okay, okay, I'm happy to accept Christianity is an preeminent religion. And
I'll respond in English.
it communicates a lot of moral, ethical, and potentially metaphysical truths. So respect. Okay, so far, sorry. However, simultaneously, all I was trying to point out was its evidence is anecdotal. Yes, as a point of fact. It doesn't mean the evidence is wrong, but it should be taken in the epistemological context it exists in, which is it's anecdotal. So effectively, it's a form of hearsay. Yeah.
Can I respond?
Sure. Hang on. Let me respond to your point as well. However, so that when we're talking about miracles, Bob is quite right that scientists deal with physics, they deal with matter and energy. Miracles, I think I'm quoting you correctly, they are not caused by physical things. I think he said that, and I think you're correct in the supposition. If your premise is true, I go with it. However, the effects that they have are physical. For example, a man walking on water, that is empirically measurable. So you have to return to the question, guys. Hello?
I'm listening.
Okay, sorry. I'm now chucking back a question to you guys. What is your given that miracles manifest at a physical level, even though they may have a metaphysical cause, what is your best empirical evidence for miracles? And I think if you're honest, the answer is going to be not a lot. That doesn't mean you're wrong, it's just honest. So therefore what you have is an anecdotal text of people who you may want to take seriously and they may be correct. And then you've got a lot of inferential arguments, yes, like the cosmological argument, etc., which you can add into the equation. That's honest as well. But at the purely empirical level, none of these 3,000 religions have got really very much to say about it. That doesn't mean they're wrong. Is that fair?
Okay, so allow us to reply. Firstly, there's absolutely nothing wrong with anecdotal evidence. We literally send people to prison for the rest of their lives on the basis of anecdotal evidence. We live our lives every day on anecdotal evidence. Countless matters are demonstrated through anecdotal evidence. The reality is that anecdotal evidence is the main form of evidence that we all use. The idea of empirical evidence within a structured system is something that only emerged in around the 1800s and the 1900s and you get the first glimpses of it in the late 1600s, started to develop through the 1700s inside a Christian milieu. In other words, you wouldn't have modern science if it wasn't for Christianity.
Right.
You can thank Christians later.
Yes.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, the reality of the resurrection is based upon the transformation of the apostles' lives. The apostles lived in a time when they did not believe that a single individual would be resurrected. They believed in a general resurrection, but not in a singular resurrection. They believed that their Messiah was dead, crucified, and that, ladies and gentlemen, they were well prepared to deal with. They had cultural norms with which to deal with the idea of a murdered Messiah, of a murdered teacher. They would venerate his tomb. They would honor his teachings. They'd already done that with the prophets before. They did that with their great rabbis. But something happened that dramatically changed their lives, including the Apostle Paul, who went from persecuting the church to being one of its chief missionaries.
Right.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, imagine that you're going through a field and you see a light zipping from left to right, backwards and forwards, and then it shoots up in the air. What do you think that you've seen? Most people will go, a UFO, because culturally we've been conditioned to think that that's what might be happening. But, ladies and gentlemen, something happened to the first apostles that radically changed their worldview. He asked for evidence of miracles. There's countless examples where doctors have said, you've been cured and we don't know why, that are connected to people praying. I personally know of at least 2 people, disabled and in a wheelchair, who through prayer have got up and walked again. One of them used to come to this park, and if memory serves me correct, the other one is Wes Huff, and I'm sorry, Wes, if I've got the name, I've got you mixed up with someone else. But the point is, there are documented miracles. Ladies and gentlemen, my question for this brother, after Ridvan responds, is this. What happened to the Apostle Paul for him to go from chief Christophobe, from chief persecutor of the church, to being its chief evangelist? What changed his mind to the point that he died for the religion that he persecuted? What changed him? Explain that for us. Ridvan, do you want to reply?
I want to just say very few things. One of them is the early history of Christianity is very well known historically to be a history of persecution, of being persecuted, of dying for the faith. Unlike Islam, for example, which is an imperialist religion, which started out as a religion of conquest and bloodshed, Christianity started out as a religion of going and preaching, putting your life on the line, being brutally murdered, and then others continuing, knowing that they are going to die as well. I recently came across, as a new Christian, came across the story of Ignatius of Antioch, also known as Saint Ignatius, who knew that he was going to be sent to his death. Despite that, on his way to his death, he wrote very famous letters in which he expressed his love for Christ, in which he expressed his love for the people, for the church, and he begged not to be saved, not to be spared from death, not to be saved from his death, because it was the best thing he could experience. This is how the early Christians were. This is how the apostles were. This is what the disciples experienced. They died for the truth. Most of them were killed somehow. They died for the truth. They died for what they believed to be true. And most of these early Christians died not only for what they heard to be true, they died for what they knew to be true, what they directly heard from Christ himself, what they heard from the contemporaries of Christ himself, what they directly witnessed, what they directly saw. They died for what they knew to be true, and they couldn't be convinced otherwise. Now, when it comes to the whole issue of empirical evidence, I have to say one thing. There is a great sickness, a great disease, if you will, in the West, that has recently formed, quite recently, that is an over-reliance on the human mind and on empirical evidence about every single thing. And you always go with it. You think, oh, the evidence points at this, so I'm going to accept this as truth. Later on, you have the evidence changing and pointing at something else, so you want to go for that. And you say, okay, actually this theory is true. Okay, so there are some modifications, actually this theory is true, and so on. There was a great reliance on the human mind and on the arrogance of man himself, who acts as if he can figure everything out, when for thousands of years most people were ignorant of the world, of what's outside the world, of what's underneath the waters, and so on. I think the whole idea that you should assess these religious beliefs and religious statements and doctrines with empirical evidence, which is not what empirical evidence was actually developed for, I think that's a ridiculous idea. It is a very useless idea. It is an idea of arrogance, of narcissism, that is very popular in today's time. And that also, by the way, I want to point out, I spent lots of time in skepticism, in free thinking, in trying to figure out what is most definitely true, what I know to be most definitely true. It also leads to a very, very empty and dark world where people are left with very shallow lives and the pursuit of happiness at the expense of meaning, and a complete lack of togetherness, a complete lack of hope. I have, after a decade of wandering in darkness, found my way to Christianity, and I must say all the pain, all the suffering, and everything has been alleviated, taken away. I feel at comfort, and it is very. I can't tell myself that I need to go back and just follow my mind and just trust my intelligence and find real meaning. It didn't lead me anywhere. It doesn't lead these people anywhere. See, he's gone. So I wouldn't really rely in terms of religious beliefs on empirical evidence. And I've also found great meaning in following the Eastern way of the Eastern traditions of Christianity, where the reliance is more on mystery rather than on perfectly defining what God is, perfectly defining what Christianity is, perfectly defining on what the world is, rather relying on humility and on mystery and experiencing and enjoying and partaking in the beauty of the Christian faith. I find great hope and goodness in it.
Okay, do you want to reply?
Well done, AP. Well done, AP. Well done.
Can I reply?
Can you reply?
Yeah.
Go on, Tonks.
I think you should always start by areas of agreement. It's a good way to go forward. I agree with my friends here that I think religion, more generally, but their religion speaks to meaning and ethics and purpose. And a life lived which isn't cognizant of that transcendent element will be somewhat empty and fruitless. Yeah? So far we're on the same page.
All right.
I do think that then we've got the issue of empirical evidence to talk about, but we've got Bob's question. Bob's question to me, assuming the anecdotal evidence about St. Paul was correct, I'm happy to accept that he had a moment of ethical insight on the road to Damascus, where he realized he was being an oppressor, and he was inspired by the anecdotal evidence about the life of Christ he had, and the example of Christ's life to live a better life and turn around. Is that reasonable?
Do you want me to reply?
No, because I've got the third point to come to. You asked me
Right.
a question, that's my answer.
Okay.
Yeah? If the anecdotal information about Paul is correct, then I'm happy to say that he had an ethical epiphany. Good for him, I applaud it, right? To return to the issue, though, of, you said that it was, no offence, but you implied that it was narcissistic simply to ask for empirical evidence.
No, that's what I said.
Okay, fine. I got the feeling you might, now I believe it can be, but my motive for asking is because I do believe, as it says in the Bible, the truth will set you free. I do believe I should pursue the truth, and I do think, although empirical evidence can't answer all questions, it can inform some questions, and it's beholden on me to interface with empirical evidence when I can. Yeah? Is that reasonable?
Yeah, I would say that the point on narcissism and empirical evidence is not that that asking for evidence is narcissism. It is rather that relying on empirical evidence as the ultimate factor on what is truth
I'm not making that claim.
is in a way narcissistic. Trying to assess religious beliefs or religious claims based on the ultimate factor of empirical evidence, I would say, is a sort of reliance on narcissism, I would say. And
Right, guys, can I just wait. Can I both encourage you to talk to everyone because there are people trying to listen?
Sorry.
Right, but Kurt, wait, he said something about. Have you finished your point? Sorry. You let him in. You let him in. You let him in. Yeah, but you let him in. Sorry. So you said that I believe the anecdotal evidence about Paul that he had a moral epiphany.
I said if.
But is that supported by the actual evidence that we have about Paul? That Paul had a moral epiphany. And that is what the anecdotal evidence says about him. On both of those points, the brother is wrong. He's just made it up.
What?
He's literally just invented it. Let's actually read about the conversion of Paul. In Acts chapter 9, this is the evidence about Paul's conversion. Now Saul, still breathing threats and murder against the disciples of the Lord, went to the high priest and asked for letters from him to the synagogues at Damascus, so that if he found any belonging to the way, both men and women, he might bring them bound to Jerusalem. As he was traveling, it happened that he was approaching Damascus, and suddenly a light from heaven flashed around him, and he fell to the ground and heard a voice saying to him, Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me? And he said, "Who are you, Lord?" And he said, "I am Jesus whom you are persecuting, but get up and enter the city, and it will be told to you what you must do." The men who traveled with him stood speechless, hearing the voice, but seeing no one. Saul got up from the ground, and though his eyes were open, he could see nothing. And leading him by the hand, they brought him into Damascus. In other words, ladies and gentlemen, the anecdotal evidence about Paul is not that he had a moral epiphany. Just ignore him, just block him and ignore him. He didn't have a moral epiphany, ladies and gentlemen. Just ignore the trolls. If you're new here, ignore them. He didn't have a moral epiphany, ladies and gentlemen. He experienced a miracle. He experienced a miracle that transformed him from persecutor to evangelist. And so my question stands. What happened to Paul to make him change his mind? If you don't believe it was a miracle, what was it, and what is the evidence for your claim? Are you all right,
Which
Ridvan?
I was trying to answer. Bob just did a very vocal and articulate version of the anecdotal evidence. Please bear in mind, this is the anecdotal evidence.
Speak louder.
Yes?
Louder.
Talk to the brother at the back.
Talk to the brother at the back. That was a very vocal and articulate version of the anecdotal evidence. But as viewers, you've got to keep in your mind what you're hearing is anecdotal evidence. My initial point is about how you should contextualize that relative to other evidence which you're obligate to consider. Empirical evidence and inferential evidence. And evidence from your own soul and your own feeling and your own experience. You need to cross-reference all of this stuff, yeah? Now, thank you, I've got the cheers. All I said was, I think he had a moral epiphany. That doesn't mean it can't have been a divinely inspired moral epiphany, but I hope you concur with me that if someone's living a life where they're oppressing, torturing and killing people and they have a moment of insight where they go, I think I should improve my behavior, that is a moral upgrade. Divinely inspired or not, it's not a moral downgrade. So again,
you're talking in generic terms. Did Paul hear a voice and see a light that blinded him?
Okay, honest truth, because I believe the truth will set me free and truth is the path to God. The honest truth is, I don't know. You don't know. He doesn't know.
What does the evidence show?
The evidence says, as I look at it, the anecdotal evidence says yes.
There you go. So should we follow the evidence?
Yes. Hang on.
Should we follow the evidence?
Okay. Yes. Yes, you should follow the evidence.
So what does the evidence show?
Following the evidence, can I answer? Following the evidence, as I just said, involves cross-referencing 4 elements of epistemology. Anecdotal, inferential, empirical, and intuitive. Yeah? I'm obliged to bring all of those to bear. When you have anecdotal evidence in that hierarchy, which generally speaking, anecdotal evidence is pretty good. All right? For the most part in life, if everyone tells you there's a policeman over there, chances are there's a policeman over there. Yeah? On the other hand, if people start telling you, oh, if everyone here tells me there's an elephant hiding behind that tree, yeah, I'd be stupid to ignore everyone telling me it. On the other hand, if I then go and look and do the empirical experiment and don't see an elephant, no matter how much anecdotal evidence has been thrown my way, the empirical evidence trumps the anecdotal evidence. Now, the stories that Bob, some of the miracles which are referred to in Christianity and other religions, if they're metaphysical claims, that's fine, but when they make it physically tangible and measurable, then you can ask for some kind of empirical feedback or evidence of it, and none is available. Not surprisingly, because if a miracle happened in the past, and maybe it did, you couldn't get empirical evidence of it right now. But let's just be clear. The empirical evidence, when it's in contradiction with the anecdotal evidence, is more powerful. That's all I'm saying.
Can I reply? Right. Did you hear him produce any empirical evidence to disprove the resurrection? No. Not a thing. All he did is give you a lecture about general epistemology, not connected to the resurrection, not connected to Paul's experience. The point of the matter is, firstly, he accepts that anecdotal evidence is generally sufficient. And that's true. It is. If I said that there was an elephant hiding behind a tree, ladies and gentlemen,
Or walking on water behind a tree.
and you had no evidence to the contrary, what would be your reason for denying it? Now, ladies and gentlemen, if I said that there was an elephant walking on water 1,000 years ago, you would have some kind of skepticism, because elephants don't normally walk on water. But if I said that because God exists, God allowed an elephant to walk on water, and we accept that God exists, then we have a good reason to be open to that possibility. We are talking about Paul, and the friend said he did not know what changed Paul's mind, even though the evidence says that it was an encounter with the risen Jesus. The encounter with the risen Jesus changed Paul's mind. Paul's changed mind is evidence to the resurrection.
Amen.
He must explain to us why Paul changed his mind, and he must evidence whatever he asserts. Not obfuscate, not colour the water, not talk about something other than Paul. He must talk about Paul, and he must talk about the evidence for whatever he says about Paul. Because if we are going to go on the evidence, then the evidence is that Paul had an encounter with the risen Jesus, and that is what changed his mind. I offer to you that the only reasonable explanation as to why Paul went from chief persecutor to chief evangelist of the church was because he saw the risen Jesus. If you disagree with me, then tell me a better theory, and then produce your evidence to back up your theory.
May I?
I also want to add one minor thing, which is, so when we speak of certain people a long time ago writing down that there was a man named Jesus who died on the cross and who was resurrected, we're not just talking about people saying this and we just sit here and blindly believe that this actually happened. It's not just a claim that we are attaching ourselves to. We have multiple factors that play into this. Multiple factors such as the character of the person who wrote this, the people who were involved in writing this, the character of Jesus himself, Jesus and the people that he himself chose, those people and what they did, how much they trusted each other, what they did for this conviction, what they did for this faith, the fact that they went out, the fact that they were persecuted, the fact that they were killed brutally and knowingly still continued and died one by one with this conviction and with the writings that we have, with the beauty of it. We accept that, the collective of it, as the truth. We don't just rely on one person or multiple people saying Jesus lived, was crucified, and was resurrected. We rely on much more than that. We have very good reason to believe that this is the truth.
Okay. Can I respond?
Yeah. But talk to the people at the back. Do them a favour.
Bob, no one has your voice, okay? Sorry, they just don't.
Try.
I totally acknowledge that Christianity presents a very compelling and uplifting narrative, and it has a lot of virtue, okay? And I take your point that I'm not just saying anecdotal, it's only anecdotal evidence. You cross-reference it as you can. I'm just trying to be truthful and objective. When I say I don't know what happened to Paul, that is the honest answer. And if you look in your own heart, and if you reflect in the mirror, you will realize you don't know either. You're guessing. I'm guessing. They may be completely right. I'm not negating the possibility that they hit the nail on the head, okay? But what I have some issue with is the level of certainty they bring to the assertion. Now, Bob said I didn't bring any empirical evidence for my argument, but I quite clearly said beforehand there are 4 levels of epistemological argument that you can bring to bear. Anecdotal, which is what they've consistently brought for the most part, but they brought in some inferential. Empirical, they brought none, nor have I. Okay? Neither of us has got any empirical evidence here. And inferential, which is what I did bring to bear and I'm bringing to bear now. What you're watching right now is a discourse in inference between two groups of people. We're not giving you any empirical evidence, we're not doing any predictive experiments with matter or energy, and okay, Bob is quoting anecdotal stuff to support his case, and that's not immaterial. I can only reiterate that when the different hierarchies of evidence come in conflict, for example, if half the people here, if everybody here tells me there's an elephant behind the tree, I should check it empirically, and if empirically there's no elephant, I can ignore your anecdotal evidence, yeah? However, imagine half the people here tell me there's an elephant, half the people tell me there isn't. Without me even doing an empirical test, I can, through inference, know, well, half the people here are wrong, yeah? That's the power of the tool of inference. You don't need empirical data in order to run the mill on certain inevitable consequences, yeah? And that power, the tool of inference is very, very powerful, and it can even transcend empirical evidence, and I could give examples, but we won't go there, because the universe we live in cosmologically is very strange. So I'm not trying to shut down these guys' view, and I like their appeal to this. I'm slightly mystified by the fact that you don't see Christianity, I think, as being ethically driven, whereas to me this is the heart of it. I find that strange.
Okay, can I reply?
Please.
So, ladies and gentlemen, did you hear any evidence at all about Paul?
Nothing.
Nothing.
Zero.
Zero.
But I don't know.
He said he doesn't know,
True.
but what he's saying to you is that you shouldn't believe that Paul experienced a miracle.
No, I didn't say that.
I asked him a very simple question.
Which was?
What changed Paul's mind? And he said he doesn't know. Ladies and gentlemen,
Nor do you.
let's just be clear. Let's be clear. When it comes to claims about history, the brother doesn't know what constitutes empirical evidence. Because the book of Acts, as a historical document, does constitute empirical evidence in a historical discussion. And we are having an historical discussion, ladies and gentlemen. The reason why he doesn't want to wrestle with the evidence in Acts is because his agenda is to let's all talk about a blasé, grey, spiritual, ethical, let's all be one kind of spirituality.
Kind of love each other,
And he doesn't want to deal, and he doesn't want to deal, and he doesn't want to deal with the actual evidence presented in front of him. Let's be clear. Paul was an enemy of the church, and he radically changed his mind. Now, ladies and gentlemen, we've all had this experience, have we not? Put your hand up if you have radically changed your perspective on something because of some kind of experience. Right?
Yeah.
And do we all agree that you do remember, that you are sure about the thing that changed your mind? So when Paul testifies that he changed his mind because he saw Jesus, doesn't that constitute evidence of the highest order? No. After all, ladies and gentlemen, if you were to explain why you changed your mind, and then someone said, well, I can't believe you because your testimony is anecdotal, would you think, oh yeah, you've got a point? Or would you just think, you're a clown? I know what I experienced. The reality is, he doesn't want to engage with the evidence because the evidence forces him to believe in a metaphysical truth that he doesn't want to believe in. And if he doesn't have to pin his belief to the resurrection, he can continue going on spreading spiritual goop about how we're all really one and we all really believe the same thing and all religions are really the same and it's all just about love.
It's a horrible philosophy.
Let him deal with the evidence in front of him and explain to us why Paul changed his mind And if he says he does not know, then let him engage with the evidence. Paul's testimony about his own experience and Luke's testimony about Paul's experience, and the fact that every author about Paul agrees that he went from persecutor to evangelist in the church because of his experience of the risen Jesus. Do you want to say anything?
Please say
Let's take a break.
something.
You want to take a break? Right. I'm gonna keep talking to him for a bit.
What did I tell you?
Can I respond to it?
Yeah.
I have a question. Can you
I gotta go. Yeah, I'm I'm going to have to go in a minute. Do you mind if I...
something?
Let him reply.
So just while the
Go on.
question is gone. While the question's in the Bob, you don't have to be so fractious in our discussion. You know? I'm not tainting my comments on what you're saying with these slights in the way that you are with me.
But that is your agenda.
No, my agenda is, you've absolutely nailed it. My agenda is, I think that the Sermon on the Mount nails it. Love thy neighbour as thyself. Nice and simple. People's lives improve, they become more spiritual.
So I'm not being
and they follow
fractious, I'm
that.
being truthful.
Well, because what I think take that to be the heart of Christianity is...
So I was not making a fractious statement then, I was just being truthful. That is your agenda.
What?
What you've just stated.
Yeah, but where is that in any way...
Because you're not...
In any way despicable or dishonest or...
Because you're not engaging, we're having a conversation about the Apostle Paul. And about your question was about what is your evidence for Christianity being true.
We're having... Hang on.
Right.
They're all over the place.
Ishmael, he needs to be over
We're having
here.
a discussion on a number of things. We're having a discussion on Paul. We're having a discussion on epistemology.
The conversation...
We're having a discussion on the relationship.
The conversation started about your saying, what is the evidence for Christianity's truth? I am using Paul as an example of evidence for the truth of the resurrection.
Yeah.
You need to engage with that comment. You need to engage with the evidence in Acts and not talk around it, not talk over it, not talk under it, and not talk about something else. You need to talk about what changed Paul's mind. Why did Paul go from being chief persecutor to chief evangelist of the church? I posit to you that Paul's changed mind is evidence of the resurrection.
What answer did I give?
You said you don't know.
Correct.
Right.
I gave, follow me as viewers, I gave the honest answer. That's the best anybody can give. Okay? So far, I don't think anybody can attack me on that count.
But then, no, you falsely spoke to everybody saying that the rest of us can't know because you don't know. That's ego and that's pride. You're saying because you don't know, no one else can know.
No, I would never say...
You did say that. We've got it on camera.
Okay, if you got it on camera, let me rephrase it. I didn't mean it quite that way. What I'm saying is we collectively and epistemologically should put the right level of credence to particular assertions together, all right? I'm saying I don't know, not because it's me, just reasonably the cross-referencing of evidence means I have some element of doubt, and that's healthy, reasonable doubt.
Do people...
That doesn't mean you're wrong.
No,
it just means you cannot reasonably be as certain as you present.
Well,
okay?
actually...
Hang on, one other thing first of all. You got people here to put their hands up. You went, how many people have had an experience that changed their lives? Again, to be clear, in my hippie, drippy way. If you've had an experience in Christianity which has improved your lives, if you've had a road to Damascus experience, all power to you.
So what was the road to Damascus experience?
I don't know. I cannot be sure.
So what, will you?
I'll give you my best bet.
Will you?
Wait,
one second. Right, go on. What is your best bet based on anecdotal evidence?
Based on the anecdotal
Go on. What
evidence,
happened?
I've already done this and it was on tape. I'll go again. If the anecdotal evidence is literally true, then my best bet is, at minimum, what I can say is he had a moral epiphany.
That's
At
not what
minimum.
the anecdotal evidence says.
What I just said.
But that's
does
not what the anecdotal evidence says.
It's implicit in
That is
morality.
not what the anecdotal evidence says. So what you're saying is,
He didn't have a moral epiphany.
what you're saying is, Paul, the evidence about Paul, I'm going to reinterpret because I don't want to actually deal with what the actual evidence says. The actual anecdotal evidence of Paul himself is that he had an encounter with the risen Jesus. That is the anecdotal evidence. That is his first person testimony. And what you're trying to do, because you don't want to deal with that,
I'm totally happy to
you're
deal
trying
with that.
to interpret it away and go, well actually it isn't about a risen Jesus, it's about a moral epiphany. No, the anecdotal evidence shows that it is about the risen Jesus.
Can I respond? I am not making a statement which contradicts the possibility that the anecdotal evidence is true. I am simply making an assertion which contextualizes it. I can't help but observe that whether it's true or not, he had a moral epiphany. So it should be something we can all agree on. Now, if that moral epiphany, if all the anecdotal evidence is accurate, then it happened literally by God, divine intervention, etc., and maybe it did. But even if it didn't, I would double down to defend the Christian narrative by going, can we at least, whether you're an atheist, a Muslim, whoever you are, at least agree that whatever the hell happened to Paul on the road to Damascus constitutes a moral upgrade? Can we collectively agree on that? Then we can micromanage the details. I'm trying to constantly find points of agreement, Not because I'm being disingenuous, but I do infer in these religions and Christianity and the Sermon on the Mount the notion that we are all equal in the eyes of God, that we should all treat one another with that equality. The truth will set you free, and I'm trying to speak to that spirit.
But the point is, you're ignoring. What you're doing is you're trying to capture Christianity for your own agenda, and I don't want you to do that. I don't want you to do that. Jesus warned us that there would be people that come as wolves dressed as sheep.
I'm a wolf.
And this is what he's talking about. People who want to capture Christianity, die away the importance of Jesus, die away the importance of the resurrection, and say that we should unite. And if you keep interrupting me, I'll start interrupting you.
Okay, but we could share the space.
If, ladies and gentlemen, his agenda is to die away the importance of Jesus, the salvific work of Jesus, and the significance of Jesus, to push some humanitarian agenda, which he admits by his words is his real cause here.
Jesus was a great humanitarian.
And this is why we should pressure him to deal with the evidence, because he wants to talk around Paul's experience. Because let's put it this way, and I challenge you to answer this question. If Jesus Christ truly rose from the dead, then do you agree that the implication of that is that Christianity is true? And if Christianity is true, that any truth claim that contradicts Christianity, therefore, logically, rationally, must be false.
Okay, can I answer?
Yeah.
Okay. Pay attention to what Bob's saying here. Be objective, right? He's given me an if statement. If Jesus resurrected, does it mean Christianity is true? I'm happy to work with the assumption if Jesus resurrected. If Jesus resurrected, it definitely has consequences and speaks to the credibility of Christianity.
What are those consequences?
Let me respond.
What are the consequences?
Let me respond. Okay? But you need to nail down now what you mean by Christianity, because it is, whether Bob likes it or not, a broad church of interpretation. So which particular version of Christianity are you speaking to? Utilitarian?
Utilitarian isn't Christianity.
No, Unitarian.
Unitarian isn't Christianity.
There are people who will self-identify.
You probably identify as a Christian, but nobody believes you.
Don't nitpick on the point. There are people who
it's important. It is important.
Who will claim to be Unitarians.
They're not Christian.
Bob, you yourself are an annihilationist, which means you're not running with the herd on this one. And I respect
Annihilationism is not a central doctrine of Christianity.
Right, nonetheless, Bob's own view is not totally within the mainstream, okay? We know this because we had a previous debate where I commend Bob on this. I seriously do. We had a debate in which he did two things which I found very encouraging.
Bro, you're getting off the point.
No, I'm not. Go fact check.
Go get on to the point.
He does embrace evolution, which was an upgrade.
I believe in evolution, the Big Bang, and I do believe in annihilationism. Done. Right, now come back to the point about the resurrection.
Son, your question was, if Jesus resurrected,
Thank you.
what's about Christianity?
Thank you.
I'm happy with the if Jesus, the Christianity.
What are the consequences of that?
I am pointing out to your viewers, there are different denominations, as demonstrated by the fact that some Christians don't believe in evolution. Bob does. Some Christians are
not about the resurrection.
Bob is.
Not about the resurrection.
Some are Unitarians. Some are Trinitarians.
Unitarians are not about the resurrection.
Some Christians don't believe in hell. Some Christians do. I happen to be one who thinks the whole Trinity, unity thing is small print. You can get the Christian message without diving into this over-intellectualized stuff. This is not a hyper-intellectual religion.
All right, let me reply to that point, because the reality is, Christianity is not a democracy. It isn't decided by vote what Christianity is. There are authorities that tell us what Christianity is. And if you disagree with those authorities, you are not a Christian. Unitarians, not Christian. Mormons, not Christians. Jehovah's Witnesses, not Christians. Arians, not Christians. Universalists, not Christians. The reality is, ladies and gentlemen, he is still avoiding the discussion about what changed Paul's mind. He has not addressed the question. He has not addressed the question. He has not addressed the question about what are the consequences if Jesus rose from the dead. Let me answer both of those questions for him.
I did.
As to the first and Paul's testimony about the resurrection, let's be clear. If Paul's mind was changed because he encountered the risen Jesus, that is a powerful evidence for the resurrection that he has no explanation for.
Nothing.
And the reason why he can only say, I don't know, despite the evidence being clear as to what happened, is because he doesn't want to wrestle with the evidence. And the first obfuscation is connected to the agenda. Because he doesn't want to believe in a risen Jesus, because a risen Jesus proves Christianity true, proves Islam false, Hinduism false, Sikhism false, atheism false, Nazism false, communism false, rabbinic Judaism false, and his agenda is that he wants to bring them all together, and so he doesn't want to pin his flag to any particular metaphysical doctrine.
Okay.
But that's the reality that he's got to deal with.
Bob, listen. I would love to that. I think that's a misrepresentation, but whatever. I would love to continue this discussion. I'm very late and I've genuinely got to go.
No worries.
If you care to continue another time.
Next week, next time I'm in the park.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, now off camera, I'd like to talk to Bob for 60 seconds before I go, if that's okay?
Right, cut.
Because I think conversations off camera are often more constructive than conversations on camera.
Here you go, that's a gift for you.
Thank you very much. Right, off camera. Would you care to come just for 1 second?
No.
Just for 60 seconds.
No, bro, what is it you want to say?
Not on camera.
They can delete it. Everybody don't put this up. Right, what is it you want to say? Anyway, look after yourself. But the point is, bro, this agenda is not one that we share. I'm not interested in hippie religion.
This is where we go. I think we do share an agenda. You've just misunderstood some of your own religion. I know you're not going to like that, but that is what I genuinely believe.
Well, you're going to have to prove it.
You won't be able to prove it.
There you go.
No.
So you assert a truth without empiricism.
By proof, you mean 100%.
You've just asserted something without empiricism.
By inference. Inferential arguments, which is what we've been doing here, and you know we have. Most of what we've done here today has been inferential discussion.
And you've ignored the evidence.
I think you're hermeneutically misinterpreting me. No, I haven't. I'm
yes, you have.
To engage with
you're saying that.
Next time.
Next time. All right. You look after yourself. Enjoy your day. God bless. Any questions, guys? Gone.